Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The steel of the dagger didn't bite into my skin, but the intent behind it drew blood. I woke not to the sound of an alarm clock, but to the sensation of a heavy, gloved hand crushing my windpipe and the visual of a silver blade hovering an inch from my left eye. "Who did you signal?" The voice was a low rumble, like tectonic plates shifting before a quake, devoid of humanity and dripping with aristocratic malice. My vision swam, the ornate, candlelit ceiling of a Baroque bedroom spinning violently. I wasn't in my studio apartment in Seattle anymore. I was staring up into the crimson irises of Cassian Thorne, the Grand Duke of the North, the Butcher of Solara. And, if my memory of the web novel I'd binge-read last night served me correctly, the man who was destined to flay his husband alive in Chapter 50. I was that husband. I was Julian Vane, the treacherous spy sent by the crown to seduce and destroy the only man the Empire feared. "Speak," Cassian hissed, the leather of his glove creaking as he tightened his grip, "or I will carve the answer out of your tongue." My survival instinct, honed by years of navigating cutthroat corporate architecture firms, kicked in faster than my conscious mind. In the novel, the original Julian had cried and begged for mercy, which only disgusted Cassian. I needed to be different. I needed to be useful. I clawed at his wrist, not to pull him off, but to stabilize myself. I locked eyes with the monster looming over me. If I had signaled anyone, I choked out, my voice raspy and foreign, "You would be dead, not interrogating me." Cassian paused. The pressure on my throat lessened by a fraction. It was the first deviation from the script. The Duchy of Obsidian was exactly as the author had described, a fortress of black stone and biting winds, perpetually shrouded in the gloom of the northern winter. But the prose had failed to capture the suffocating isolation of it. As Julian Vane, I was a pariah in a palace of wolves. 3 days had passed since I woke up with a blade at my throat. I had spent them locked in the West Wing, piecing together the fractured memories of the body's previous owner. The original Julian was a tragic, foolish creature, a minor noble with a gambling debt, coerced by the Crown Prince Alaric, the novel's so-called hero, into marrying Cassian to steal the plans for the duchy's magical defenses. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror, adjusting the high collar of a midnight blue velvet coat. The reflection showed a man of delicate beauty, pale skin, raven hair that fell in soft waves, and eyes the color of polished amethyst. It was a face made for deception. The heavy oak doors creaked open. Cassian stood there. He was a towering figure of broad shoulders and lethal grace, dressed in military regalia that emphasized his status as the Empire's shield and its greatest threat. "You requested an audience," Cassian said, stepping into the room. He didn't close the door. He didn't fear me enough to need privacy. "I requested a divorce," I corrected, turning to face him. I kept my chin high, masking the trembling of my knees. A dark, humorless chuckle vibrated in his chest. He closed the distance between us in 2 long strides, his presence sucking the oxygen from the room. "A divorce? You think you can walk out of the wolf's den because the climate doesn't suit you?" "I think we both know this marriage is a sham," I replied evenly. "I am a spy. You are a traitor in the eyes of the crown. We are waiting for the other to strike. It's exhausting. Let me go, Cassian. I will disappear. I won't report back to the prince." Cassian's expression shifted from mockery to something colder, something archaic. He reached out, his fingers brushing the pulse point of my neck. The touch sent a jolt of electricity down my spine, a visceral reaction that wasn't entirely fear. "You truly don't remember, do you?" he murmured, his thumb tracing my jawline. "Or is this another one of your plays?" "Remember what?" "The Blood Pact." My blood ran cold. The Blood Pact was a plot device introduced in the sequel, a forbidden rite that bound 2 souls. If one died, the other would suffer excruciating agony until they followed suit. It wasn't in the first book. "You bound us," I whispered. "No, you did," Cassian corrected, his eyes narrowing. "On our wedding night, you slipped the essence of ours into the wine. You thought it was a truth serum to make me spill my secrets. Instead, you bound your pathetic life force to mine." He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. "That is why I haven't killed you, Julian. Not out of mercy, but because if your heart stops, mine falters. You are not my husband. You are my parasite. And I never let go of what belongs to me, even if I hate it. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The plot hole, why the villain kept the spy around for 50 chapters, wasn't bad writing. It was mutual assured destruction. I was trapped. Weeks bled into a month. The dynamic in the obsidian duchy shifted, subtle as a crack in the ice. I stopped trying to escape and started trying to survive. I used my background as an architect to make myself indispensable. I pointed out structural weaknesses in the perimeter wall. I redesigned the heating ducts in the servants' quarters, earning the quiet gratitude of the staff who had previously looked at me with disdain. Cashin watched me. He was a predator observing prey that had suddenly grown claws. The turning point came during the winter solstice banquet. It was a lavish affair, intended to show the crown that the North was still loyal, despite the rumors of rebellion. The ballroom was a sea of silks and jewels, but the air was thick with tension. I stood by the refreshments, nursing a glass of wine, when he approached. Prince Alaric. The hero. He was golden-haired, blue-eyed, and radiated the kind of practiced charisma that made my skin crawl. In the novel, Julian had been hopelessly in love with him. Julian, Alaric whispered, sliding a hand onto my waist. You look pale. Has the monster been mistreating you? I stiffened, pulling away. Lord Cashin treats me as his station demands, Your Highness. Alaric's smile faltered. You haven't sent a report in weeks. We were worried. The poison I gave you. Have you used it? I looked at the man who was supposed to be the savior of the empire. I saw only a manipulator who had sent a lamb to slaughter. I flushed it. I lied smoothly. It seemed unstable. Alaric's grip on my arm tightened, painful now. Careful, Julian. Remember who owns you. If you don't deliver the defense plans by midnight, I will expose your gambling debts to the public. You will be ruined. Let go of him. The voice cut through the chatter of the ballroom like a guillotine blade. The music died instantly. Cashin stood behind me, a wall of black velvet and silver medals. One hand rested on the hilt of his sword. The other reached out to pull me from Alaric's grasp. He didn't pull me behind him like a damsel. He pulled me to his side, establishing us as a unit. Grand Duke. Alaric smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. We were just catching up. Old friends. My husband has no friends in the capital, Cashin said, his voice projecting to the silent room. He is a Vane of the North now, and we do not take kindly to outsiders bruising our property. He looked down at me, and for the first time, the crimson eyes weren't filled with contempt. They were possessive, burning. Are you well? He asked, ignoring the prince of the empire entirely. I am now, I breathed. And in that moment, the enemies to lovers trope wasn't just a tag on a web novel. It was the frantic beating of my heart against my ribs. The attack happened 3 hours later. Alaric hadn't waited for the plans. He had brought assassins, disguised as the royal entourage. The explosion rocked the west wing, shattering the windows and plunging the corridor into darkness. I was thrown against the stone wall, coughing as dust and smoke filled the air. Cashin, I screamed, scrambling over the debris. Stay down. Cashin emerged from the smoke, his sword drawn, glowing with a faint, violet magical aura. He was a whirlwind of violence, cutting down 3 masked assailants before they could reach the stairs. But there were too many. They knew the layout. The original Julian had sent the initial blueprints months ago. The library, I shouted, grabbing Cashin's arm as he deflected a crossbow bolt. The structural support in the east wall is compromised from the renovations. If we lure them there and blow the supports, we bring the roof down. Cashin finished, understanding instantly. He didn't question how I knew. He didn't question my loyalty. He grabbed my hand. Run. We sprinted through the burning corridors, hand in hand. The trust was intoxicating. We burst into the grand library, the assassins hot on our heels. Go. Cashin shoved me toward the balcony exit. Not without you. I have to trigger the collapse, he roared, turning back to face the horde. No. I saw an assassin aiming a mana rifle at Cashin's blind spot. Without thinking, I threw myself back into the fray. I tackled Cashin just as the shot fired. The mana bullet grazed my shoulder, searing flesh, but I slammed my hand onto the rune-etched pillar I had identified weeks ago. Collapse. The ceiling groaned. I looked up at Cashin, who was staring at me with wide, horrified eyes. "You idiot," he growled, shielding my body with his own as tons of stone and timber rained down around us. He flared his magical aura, creating a violet dome of protective energy. It was a spell that drained life force rapidly. The world went black. I woke to the smell of antiseptic and ozone. I was lying in the master chamber, Cashin's room. My shoulder was bandaged, and my body felt heavy, but the pain was distant. I turned my head. Cashin was sitting in a chair by the bedside. He looked wrecked. His impeccable uniform was torn, his hair disheveled, and dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes. He was watching me with an intensity that made the air shimmer. "You took a bullet," he said, his voice raspy. "You were going to bring the roof down on yourself." I countered, my voice weak. "I would have survived." "You nearly didn't." He stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. He paced to the window, looking out at the snow. "Why? You had a clear path to the exit. You could have let me die. The blood pact would have killed you. Yes, but it would have been quick. You chose pain." "I didn't choose pain," I said softly. "I chose you." Cashin went still. He turned slowly. The monster, the tyrant, the villain, he looked vulnerable. He walked back to the bed and sat on the edge. His hand hovered over my uninjured shoulder, then, trembling slightly, cupped my face. "They say I am a monster," he whispered, "that I have no heart. But when you fell, when I saw your blood," his thumb brushed my cheekbone, "I felt fear, Julian. For the first time since I was a child. I'm not the man you married, Cashin." I confessed, the truth bubbling up. "I'm not the spy anymore. I'm just me." "I know," he murmured, leaning down until our foreheads touched. "The Julian I married was a ghost. You are the only real thing in this frozen hell." He kissed me then. It wasn't soft. It was desperate, tasting of smoke and survival. It was a claim, a seal. "Alaric has fled," Cashin said against my lips. "He has declared us enemies of the state. The armies of the Empire will march on Obsidian come spring." "Let them come," I said, threading my fingers through his hair. "I know their strategies. I know their weaknesses. I know how this story ends." Cashin pulled back slightly, a dark, predatory smirk curving his lips. "Oh, and how does it end?" I smiled, pulling the villain back down to me. "With the world burning, and us ruling the ashes. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, not with chains, but with the willingness to bleed for him." If you enjoyed seeing Julian rewrite destiny and claim the villain's heart, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who tried to kill you if he became the only one willing to die for you? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Cashin, tall, broad shoulders, military regalia with silver medals, long black coat, crimson eyes, stern expression, protective pose, holding a glowing violet sword. Man 2. Julian, beautiful, raven hair, pale skin, wearing torn midnight blue velvet noble clothes, bandaged shoulder, looking up at Cashin with trust. Background is a crumbling library with falling debris and fire, magical violet barrier shields surrounding them, dramatic lighting, cinematic composition, sharp focus, intense atmosphere, particles of magic in the air.